There are pains that don't announce themselves. No one points at them and says, "Yeah, this one counts." Because they're quiet. Because they don't explode. Because they don't look dramatic enough to deserve attention. You're not attacked. You're not openly rejected. No one tells you to your face that you failed. You're simply ignored. You still show up. You wake up. You go to work. You do what you're supposed to do. You prepare. You think things through. You put real effort into what you're doing. You're not careless. You're not lazy. You don't disappear when things get hard. You try. And you try seriously. And then, nothing. No feedback. No acknowledgement. No sign that anyone even noticed you were there. That silence doesn't hit you like a punch. It works differently. It wears you down. Because being hated still means being seen. Being criticized still means you exist in someone's world. Being ignored feels like you were never there at all. And that's why this hurts in a way that's hard to explain. Not because you're weak, not because you need validation too much, but because the human mind was never built to be unseen. For most of human history, being ignored meant being excluded, and being excluded meant danger. That instinct never left. So when you're ignored at work, when your effort goes unnoticed, when the things you care about don't get a response, your body reacts as if something is wrong. Your chest tightens, your thoughts start looping, and slowly, quietly, you start turning on yourself. Am I invisible? Am I wasting my time? Am I actually not good enough? Does any of this even matter? You don't say these things out loud. You think them late at night, in the car, staring at the ceiling. And because no one sees this kind of pain, you don't even know how to talk about it. Stoic philosophy does not rush in to comfort you here. It doesn't say, "Don't feel this." It doesn't promise that one day everyone will suddenly recognize your value. Stoicism doesn't exist to make you feel better. It exists to make you clear. And the first truth it gives you is uncomfortable. Effort does not guarantee recognition. You can do things the right way. You can give everything you have. You can sacrifice. And still, no one notices. That doesn't mean your effort is meaningless, but it does mean this: the world does not owe you acknowledgement. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor, a man with power most people will never touch, had to remind himself of this every day. Do not expect praise. Do not expect understanding. Do not expect fairness. Not because he was bitter, but because he understood something essential. The moment you tie your worth to other people's attention, you give your life to things you cannot control. Stoics divide life very simply. There are things you control, and there are things you don't. You control how you act, how you work, how you respond, how you treat others, how you behave when no one is watching. You do not control who notices you, who values you, who understands you, who acknowledges your effort. When you mix these up, you suffer. You work hard and demand to be seen. You give and demand something back. You try and demand recognition. And when it doesn't come, you don't just feel disappointed. You collapse inward, not because you failed, but because your ego was feeding on attention. Stoics don't ask, "Why don't they see me?" They ask something colder and much harder. If no one ever sees this, would I still do it? If the answer is yes, you are living by principle. If the answer is no, you are living for approval. And those two paths lead to very different lives. At work, many people give real effort and are taken for granted. They carry responsibility. They stay quiet. They don't complain. And they watch louder people get noticed. If you're not careful, this makes you bitter. Or worse, it makes you start working to be seen instead of working because it's right. Stoics refuse that. They ask, "Is the value I create real?" If it is, they sharpen it. If it isn't, they adjust. They don't beg for the spotlight. They move to better ground. In relationships, giving without being met is not love. It's imbalance. If you have to keep proving that you matter, Stoicism says something hard. Silence, sometimes, is already an answer. And staying too long in that silence doesn't make you loyal. It makes you smaller. Stoics walk away, quietly, without drama, without resentment. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because self-respect matters more than attention. If you recognize yourself here, don't rush to react. We're only beginning. Ego, attention, and the cost of wanting to be seen. There is something that always surfaces when you're ignored. It doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't announce itself, but it's there. Ego. Ego isn't always arrogance. Most of the time, it's much quieter than that. At its core, ego is simply the need to know. Do I matter? And when you try and no one responds, that question starts echoing. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I need to try harder. Maybe I need to change. Maybe if I give more, they'll notice. At first, these thoughts feel productive. They feel like responsibility. But if you're not careful, ego turns effort into hunger. You stop acting from principle and start acting from need. You talk more than necessary. You explain yourself when no one asked. You give past the point of health. You begin performing, not because you're fake, but because you're afraid that without attention, you disappear. Stoics don't destroy the ego. They discipline it. They don't allow ego to ask, do they see me? They allow it to ask, am I living up to my own standards? That shift is everything. Immature people live off attention. Praise lifts them. Silence crushes them. Their emotional state rises and falls constantly. Stoics refuse this, not because they don't want recognition, but because they refuse to be owned by it. Marcus Aurelius warned himself, do not act as if every deed requires an audience. That sentence sounds simple. Living it is not. Modern life is built on attention. Visibility is treated like value. Loudness is confused with importance. Presence is mistaken for substance. If you're not careful, you start believing, if no one sees me, I don't exist. Stoicism rejects this completely. Value does not need witnesses. Think about what truly shapes you. No one sees the moment you choose honesty over advantage. No one sees the discipline you keep alone. No one sees the restraint it takes to stay silent. And yet those moments build your character, not applause. Being ignored is a test, not of talent, but of motive. If you work for praise, silence will break you. If you work for principle, silence will refine you. Attention is scarce and deeply unfair. It rewards noise over depth, speed over patience, performance over consistency. If you measure yourself by attention, you lose before you begin. Stoics choose a different game. They become people who do not need to be seen in order to exist. That path is lonely, but it is free. When recognition is no longer required, your behavior changes. You do what's right, even when it goes unnoticed. You speak only when necessary. You stop reacting to everything. Your energy becomes quieter and heavier. But silence is not always something to endure. Sometimes, silence is information. If your effort creates no impact, if your skills are unused, if your presence changes nothing, silence is data, and Stoics respect data. They don't complain, they don't dramatize, they move, quietly, without resentment. A tree does not grow from praise. It grows from the right soil. The same truth applies to relationships. If you are always reaching, always adjusting, always waiting, and silence keeps returning, Stoics ask a hard question. Am I sacrificing self-respect to stay connected? If the answer is yes, they leave. Not angrily, not bitterly, but cleanly. They understand something painful. Staying where you are, consistently ignored, will eventually teach you to ignore yourself. Stoics refuse that lesson. There is another cost to wanting to be seen, a cost few people talk about. When your identity depends on attention, you lose control of your inner world. Your mood becomes reactive. Your confidence becomes unstable. You start editing yourself instead of becoming yourself. Stoics protect their inner authority fiercely. They would rather be misunderstood than betray their own standards. They would rather be unseen than dishonest. And here's the difficult part. Sometimes you are ignored not because the world is blind, but because what you offer is not yet clear enough. Stoics do not avoid this possibility. They do not inflate themselves. They ask, is my work sharp? Is my value real? Am I improving or just busy? If adjustment is needed, they adjust. Not for applause, but for integrity. This is where Stoicism becomes practical. It does not romanticize suffering. It does not glorify being ignored. It uses silence as a mirror. If silence reveals that you are in the wrong place, you move. If silence reveals that you need refinement, you work. If silence reveals that you are acting from ego, you correct. Always calmly, always deliberately. Over time, something subtle happens. You stop asking, when will they notice me? You start asking, how can I be better tomorrow? Attention stops being the goal. It becomes irrelevant. And paradoxically, this is when people begin to feel your presence. Not because you demand it, but because you carry weight. You speak less. But when you do, it lands. You act less. But what you do matters. You don't chase importance, you embody it. Stoics do not promise recognition. They promise stability. And stability, in a world addicted to attention, is rare. If you were listening to this and feel exposed, that's normal. This part of the path is uncomfortable, but we're not done yet. The final part is where everything comes together. When you no longer need to be seen. There is a paradox that only reveals itself after you've spent enough time being ignored. At first, silence feels like rejection. Then it feels like confusion. Then it feels like pain. But eventually, if you don't run from it, it becomes something else. It becomes clarity. When you are no longer trying to be seen, you begin to see yourself more clearly. There is no audience to impress, no image to maintain, no performance to keep alive. Just one question, asked honestly. Who am I when no one is watching? Most people never sit with that question long enough. They escape into noise, into distraction, into validation. Stoics stay. When no one is watching, you discover whether your discipline is real. Not the kind that exists when someone is checking, but the kind that shows up on quiet mornings, on empty evenings, on days when nothing is returned. Do you still keep your word to yourself? Do you still choose what's difficult over what's easy? Do you still act with integrity when it would be convenient not to? No one knows the answers to these questions, except you, and that knowledge is heavy. This is why silence is such a powerful teacher. It removes excuses. It strips away illusion. You can no longer say, I would be better if someone noticed. You are forced to become better without witnesses. Stoics train for this deliberately. They practice what could be called discipline without applause. They wake up early even when no one cares. They work on skills that bring no immediate reward. They choose restraint when reaction would feel justified, not because it looks noble, but because it builds something stable. At work, this means becoming competent enough that your confidence does not depend on titles. You know what you can do. You know what you've earned. Whether others recognize it or not stops controlling you. In creation, this means continuing to build even when the numbers stay quiet. You refine, you improve, you deepen your craft. Not because it guarantees success, but because it aligns you with who you want to be. In relationships, this means choosing self-respect over prolonged longing. You do not beg for presence. You do not negotiate your dignity. You let silence speak when words no longer matter. This is not emotional coldness. It is emotional maturity. Stoics still feel deeply. They simply refuse to let feelings dictate their self-worth. There is another shift that happens here. You stop asking the world for permission. You stop asking, is this enough? You start asking, is this honest? That change rewires everything. You no longer react to every opinion. You no longer explain yourself endlessly. You no longer feel the urge to prove your value. Not because you don't care, but because you are anchored. Marcus Aurelius wrote something that only makes sense at this stage. Be content to seem what you really are. Not impressive, not admired, just real. And here's the paradox. When you no longer need to be seen, you carry a different kind of presence. You are quieter, but heavier. You don't compete for attention, but attention notices you. Not because you demand it, but because you are no longer fragmented. Your words carry weight because you don't waste them. Your actions matter because they are deliberate. Your silence feels grounded because it isn't avoidance, it's choice. People may not be able to explain why they trust you, why they listen when you speak, why your presence feels solid, but they feel it, and that is not something you can manufacture. It only comes from time spent building yourself without witnesses. Being ignored does not make you insignificant. Chasing recognition does. Stoics understand this distinction clearly. They do not romanticize being overlooked. They simply refuse to be owned by it. Sometimes recognition arrives later. Sometimes it never comes. Stoicism prepares you for both, because by the time recognition shows up, you no longer need it. And if it never does, you are still intact. This is inner sovereignty, the ability to stand steady without external approval, to move forward without applause, to remain whole when unseen. If you are listening to this late at night, if you feel like your effort has been disappearing into silence, if you've wondered whether any of it matters, hear this clearly. You are not invisible. You are in a phase that most people refuse to endure. And if you stay with it, not bitter, not desperate, but disciplined, you will become someone who does not need to be noticed to exist. And that is the kind of strength no one can take from you.